Good evening. Tonight I'm going to be trying something interesting. This is Mavericks Brewing Company out of Half Moon Bay, California. And this is a rye pale ale. So it is 3.75% alcohol by volume. That's kind of sad. I don't know how I feel about that. Anyway, 3.75% alcohol by volume. And it says, huge flavor and aroma from barley and rye malt with Cascade and Chinook hops. Mavericks beers and ales as bold as the Half Moon Bay wave it's named after. So, we'll see. I don't know. 3.75% alcohol. So, the American ale category has a style 10A, which is American Pale Ale, and the alcohol range there is 4.5 to 6.2%. So technically, as a rye pale ale, there is no such thing in the BJCP style guidelines, so this is a specialty ale, but it also seems that it could kind of overlap with the light hybrid style 6D, which is American wheat or rye beer. So it's probably kind of a blend of both of those categories. And the alcohol by volume range there is from 4 to 5.5%. So already, based on alcohol by volume, it really doesn't fit into either of those categories. But I'll try to judge it fairly anyway. Lots of interesting aroma, just from pouring. It's definitely hoppy. So pale ales, I'm always surprised by how hoppy pale ales are. The IBUs for the pale ale category is 30 to 45%, 30 to 45 IBUs. And so they're still relatively bitter, especially as an American pale ale. There's a lot of hop aggressiveness. So that's not necessarily surprising. It's kind of danky. There is some malt backbone and some rye backbone to this, but it's overwhelmingly, not overwhelmingly, it is heavily hopped. Let's say it that way. So appearance-wise, it's an amber color. And it did pour with a pretty good head. Looks like it's going to retain both characteristics of a pale ale. So we're good with that. And as far as clarity, it looks like it's slightly hazy, but just slightly hazy. It looks like it's not heavily carbonated. Not very heavily carbonated. Interesting. I don't really there aren't any specific notes speaking to what we're expecting for carbonation, but I really don't see a lot of bubbles at all. All right, let's dive into flavor. From all the hops aggressiveness that I smelled up front, I was expecting an overwhelmingly hoppy beer. But this is actually very well balanced. It has a nice complex maltiness that almost leaves like a sweetness that pairs very nicely with a just slightly astringent drying finish from the hops. It's very, very well balanced. I'd say the hops is probably on the citrusy side. It has some almost grapefruity qualities, but it's kind of a danky, skunky hop. And I know that it's not light exposure that would have made it skunky. So I think that it's hops related because I don't see any light exposure in this can. But interesting flavor. The maltiness, the rye. I don't know that I would necessarily know that this was a rye beer if I didn't read it on the label. And it does something interesting. The aroma is pretty strong and definitely hops suggestive. The finish is very well balanced. You get some sweetness and some hoppiness out of it. The middle of it, the flavor almost drops out entirely. And I'm interested to see what happens as this warms up a little bit, if the flavor kind of intensifies. But it almost has no flavor. It almost has no flavor in the middle, which is an interesting experience. Almost a watery flavor in the middle. I don't think that necessarily detracts from the overall appeal of this particular beer. Mouthfeel-wise, it's kind of on the lighter side of medium. It does have some pretty good body to it, but it doesn't have a lot of carbonation, so it's not crisp necessarily, but it's not like sweet and thick or velvety either. Decent body, drinkable. For the American Pale Ale category, the history of this particular style would be an American adaptation of English Pale Ale reflecting indigenous ingredients of hops, malt, yeast, and water, often lighter in color, cleaner in fermentation byproducts, and having less caramel flavors than English counterparts. I think all of that still rings true here, but we get... I don't even know what the good description is. I think we get a little bit more bitterness out of the rye than we would out of a standard pale ale malt. And I think it pairs nicely with the fact that pale ale will tend to be on the hoppier side. So those are very complementary flavors there. I've had a couple of rye PAs. And those have been really great. And I definitely snapped this up quick when I saw a rye pale ale because I really enjoy rye beers a lot. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite beers is Rye Piper by Ale Industries, and it's a very good rye ale. I think very drinkable, and that this is on par with that. The pale ale quality, where the flavor is less intense, kind of in the middle, is actually an enjoyable thing. I really like drinking kind of roller coaster style beers where the flavor experience, where the flavor has an experience. Let's say it that way. And this beer offers that. This is really well done. I gotta say, I'm a little disappointed in the 3.75% alcohol by volume. But I guess that makes it sessionable, I suppose. And now I'm curious exactly what the threshold is for a session ale, where you're trying to achieve a lower alcohol by volume, so you can hang out and drink more, but still have a good flavor. So I guess this makes this a sessionable ale, and very well done. So hats off to Mavericks, and Good beer. Have you had a chance to try this? I'm very curious about that. So Mavericks out of Half Moon Bay is actually brewed in San Carlos, California, and um, it's good. Take it to the beach because it's not a glass bottle. So we'll put this on the craft beer in a can playlist. Share with me your thoughts down below and let me know if you've tried it, whether or not you liked it, where you found it. I found it at Whole Foods. Not a bad price. I think it was $7.99 for the 6-pack. Although $7.99 for a 6-pack and it's 3.75% alcohol by volume, but I think I'll forgive them that one transgression. Nonetheless, share with me. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great night.